If y'all got a crew, you got to have a fall guy in the crew.
That's the voice of former NFL wide receiver Chris Carter. The laugh you heard is from former NFL defensive tackle Warren Sapp. Not exactly the best guys historically when it comes to off the field in NFL history, but hey, I am playing Chris Carter talking about a fall guy because this is something that we're going to be doing going forward with the Houston Astros. When Joe returns, Joe's out today, be back on Monday, we are going to introduce a new segment for when the Astros falter called Fall Guy. Now, yesterday, the offense is the fall guy for the Astros. Yeah, it wasn't Ronel Blanco's best start, but, I mean, the Cardinals scored 4 runs. And the guy on the hill for St. Louis with his mustache, Miles Mistakos or whatever the hell his name is, not worth remembering, no offense. His mustache is worthy of remembering. So I'll just call him Miles the Mustache. That guy's got a 5.5 ERA, and you got 5 hits on him. You know, we didn't even have a runners in scoring position crisis because that didn't really happen that much. We didn't really have a left on base issue either. The Astros just didn't get hits. Yainer Diaz hit a home run his 3rd straight game with a home run, and Trey Cabbage hit a home run as well. But I think that after a 3-3 homestand where it felt like the Astros finally had an opportunity to do something they've only done once this year, get a sweep, they don't pull it off. I think a lot of Astros fans are back in that bad vibes mode and are perhaps looking for a pound of flesh sooner rather than later. And in a way, yesterday has offered some. First, it was Jose Abreu. Jose Abreu is now back. It seems like even if he was the fall guy for the early season struggles, he's still going to be getting opportunities to play. So the other nominees are, I think, obviously the hitting coaches because, look, they have one of the best averages in baseball. They are up there in a lot of offensive categories. But, I mean, why are things not good when this team has runners in scoring position? Why can't they put runs across the plate? Why can they get on base but not score? Is it the lineup order, as Jeremy Booth, when he's joined us, has opined? Is it something else? So Alex Cintrone and Troy Snicker are, at the very least, I think, guys to have in the back of your mind. Maybe the Astros move on from them in the same way that the Seattle Mariners moved on from their offensive coordinator, which apparently is a real position in baseball. Maybe that's something that happens as the season progresses. But I think right now you should be looking at the training staff. If you've listened to me here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 long enough, you've known that I've always found myself baffled and confused by the way that the Astros communicate injuries to us because they're generally all over the place. And I don't know if you fault the training staff for a larger baseball issue with 4 pitchers requiring elbow surgeries over the last 13 months, Christian Javier, Jose Urquidy, Luis Garcia, Lance McCullers, because I guess the USA Today reported that 35.7% of pitchers on major league rosters at the end of last year had undergone Tommy John surgery at some point in their careers. That is insane. That is over a third of pitchers in baseball. There were 275 pitchers at the major league level who had Tommy John surgery at some point in their career. In 2016, there were 190. So again, that's an increase of what? Close to 50%?
Yeah, it's almost 100 more.
Yeah.
In 8 years.
It's insane. That is an issue across baseball. I don't think that's something you can blame the Astros for. But the way the Astros talk about injuries does make you wonder about their training staff as a whole. I mean, here's Dana Brown, who is not a doctor, talking for the Astros training staff about Christian Javier after the announcement that Javier was getting elbow surgery. Because remember, he had a neck issue, and Brown wasn't concerned about the diminishing velocity 10 days ago. And now he has this to say. Javier's velocity has been fluctuating up and down throughout the course of the year. And when we signed him long-term, he was fine, so we know that something must be going on. And so we got him checked out. I think they're separate issues, but ultimately we're glad that we found out what was wrong, and hopefully we'll get him back next year around July. We're glad we found out what was wrong, is what Dana Brown said. Does anyone believe him when he says that? How could you? I don't. And then, as highlighted by Chandler Rome in his piece in The Athletic, 4 thoughts on the season-ending injuries for Christian Javier and Jose Urquidy. Houston's return to play procedure is back under scrutiny. He starts off talking about Christian Javier. Javier, who had spent 18 days on the injured list with neck discomfort, returns. The velocity's down. He goes back on the injured list with right forearm discomfort, and then he's getting elbow surgery. You heard Dana say just a second ago when I read that quote out that these 2 instances were separate injuries, but I mean, do you believe that? I'll be honest, I'm just not going to believe anything that they say. And I feel like one way that any of us, Sean, might start trusting the Astros when they talk about injuries is if they make some sort of political statement, a public statement, press release about moving to a different training team, medical team.
Yeah, I mean, even like what Chandler was saying with the return to play thing, even if it was a neck issue, it's like it's not crazy to think that trying to maximize velocity at all costs, and you come back from a neck issue, and maybe you're not all the way back, and your velocity's dipping, and to get some more out of it, you're tweaking how you're pitching, how you're throwing a baseball, and then that can lead to stress on your elbow.
Yep.
Like it could all be connected to where the neck injury originally is what, and having to compensate for that.
Yeah.
Is what leads to the elbow.
So this isn't the only elbow that potentially, Sean, that they perhaps didn't know what they were doing with. Because the other question you got to ask, okay, Jose Urquidy also had forearm issues, and he's back out there. Did they rush him back? Another question. Remember when JP France was dealing with some issues? Dana Brown said on May 26th that France may have been rushed back from a shoulder injury. Hey, remember when Jake Myers had a shoulder injury and they brought him back? I mean, that was talked about, and this is multiple times now where the Astros, best case scenario, have bad luck. Worst case scenario, are operating like the training staff in the movie Any Given Sunday, where they're just sending guys back out there. And we're not talking about football here. We're talking about baseball. And look, I get it. Team doctors, they're always going to be biased for the best interests of the team, which are to get these guys back out there as quickly as possible. But clearly today, just based off of the data we just gave you, we're talking about over a third of baseball having had to have Tommy John surgery. A third of all pitchers have undergone it, which is insane. So if that's happening across the sport, shouldn't you be as cautious as possible? Don't you kind of understand maybe why Lance McCullers has taken as much time to come back from all of his injuries? It makes me understand it a little bit more. I get the frustration, but when that data's in front of you, you think to yourself, you know what? Maybe Lance should come back to the beat of his own drum instead of, I don't know, being put back out there, given that especially the sample size that you have this year is that you got 2 guys where you can make a strong case. They were put back out too quickly, and another guy in JP France with the same situation, except for not elbow here we're talking about. We're talking shoulder. But that's 3 pitchers. That's 3 starting pitchers for you on a team that is supposed to have the most depth in pitching in all of baseball. You can definitely make the argument that the training staff or medical staff effed this up 3 times in 1 year. Is there going to be any accountability for them? So if there should be a pound of flesh or a fall guy for the Astros right now, I think it's the training staff, the medical staff, whoever the hell's there. Someone has to learn here, okay? Forget the fact that the Astros can't hit for whatever reason, can't score runs, that they've been a 500 baseball team for the last calendar year. If you're giving these guys big-time contracts and you have a payroll that's top 3 in baseball, and guys just keep on getting hurt, and then when they come back, they re-aggravate the injury, I don't know. Maybe you should take care of your products a little bit better. Maybe you should change insurance companies, if you will.
Yeah, they're like the fact that they seem like they're rushing guys back, or at least that's the like that's one of the things that is eyebrow raising, is that these guys come back and then they get hurt again, or they come back and in a rehab start get hurt. Where, like you mentioned, which football movie? Any Given Sunday is what the movie you mentioned. I mean, it's any football movie really. Where you have the team doctor rushing guys back, being like, "All right, are you sure? Are you sure?" Or holding the fingers next to it. How many fingers are you saying? The thing is, though, with these injuries, you can't really like tough it out if you're going to be a pitcher and your arm hurts. Like it's not like being a middle linebacker and maybe your knee is gimpy, but you can still run on it, or maybe you're having a pec issue and you're Ray Lewis and can come back very fast from a pec issue. A season-ending injury doesn't end your season if you're Ray Lewis. But if you're Christian Javier, it's like no, like if I have to change the way I throw, or if I'm not feeling 100%, and now like there's going to be knock-on effects, like I could blow out my UCL. Yeah. Like I could have serious injuries to where it's like it's not possible for me to do this for 18 months. Yeah. Or if you're going to go with the football analogy, it's like maybe your knee issue gets worse. Maybe it's all the way to where it's now an ACL tear. But I mean, especially nowadays, like ACL, like you miss 8 months, 9 months, and you're kind of back on track, back to rehabbing. You feel like the guy's
going to be back after suffering an ACL injury. And I mean, ever since Adrian Peterson came back from it, I think we all believe that this is no longer that serious of an injury from a long-term perspective.
You also don't have a third of all football players with ACL injuries. You don't have a huge percentage of your sport.
35.7% of pitchers. I mean, wow.
That's nuts. You carry like 12 pitchers on a team?
So that means four
guys on every team.
Possibly 5 have had it. Or will get it.
Yeah, or will. I mean, that's what they all have to look around and be like, am I the one who gets am I next who gets it?
Seriously.
I mean, just think about Astros. Like Verlander's gotten it. Got it a few years ago. Like there's so many guys that just off the top of your head, you're like, oh yeah. Actually, there's less guys off the top of your head because so many guys get it that you're like, oh yeah, he didn't pitch that year. Why was that?
And some of these guys have had it done multiple times.
I know. I mean, now it's all the way down to like college and high school kids get it.
Yeah.
I knew so when I was in high school that had Tommy John. A pitcher on our baseball team had Tommy John.
I will never forget this conversation that I had with a guy. This was in Disney World when I was like 8. A guy who was claiming to be, I believe, reliever Steve Trout. And maybe he was Steve Trout. I don't know. I remember I recognized the name because I was a huge nerd that read sports almanacs back in the day. And I remember he told me, do not throw a curveball until you're like 15. And then even then, you better be careful with it. And I mean, I agree with him, but it feels like the last 10 years in particular, something happened where we are now throwing our arms out of the socket that it connects to your shoulder. Is it Tim Lincecum? Is he the guy who started it all? Because I remember Lincecum was throwing with a ridiculous velocity and it is smaller than me.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's not like guys pitch like him anymore, or like it's not like there's a whole bunch of Lincecum clones out there.
Right.
But I think it's the same. What he was chasing is now what everyone chases. I think that's more. I don't know if it's mechanically the same, but it's what Tim Lincecum had to do to pitch as hard as he did at his size. is now you have guys that are big,
Right.
also trying to maximize their velocity at any given cost. And listen, like, I'm not a pitching coach, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you, like, something happened, maybe not in 2016, but we're feeling the effects of it now, where the way that these guys are taught or coached how to throw a baseball, maybe not even I'm sure some of it's trickled down to like travel baseball because those parents are psychopaths with it. But I think even in a major league system or in a minor league system, how they're like, no, this is how we want our pitchers to pitch. I think that is a reason why all these guys' elbows blow out now.
That's certainly a factor. Is there a way to prevent it? I don't even know.
Teach them a different way to pitch.
But
I think it's the way to. If one team is like, our development key, instead of just throwing as hard as possible, what we're gonna do is just have our best pitchers available all the time because they're not throwing their arms out of their sockets.
Big picture, I don't know what can be done to stop this. Much like big picture, I don't know what Tank Dell is supposed to do to stop the gun violence.
Maybe Tank Dell can get on this one too. When he's done with the gun violence, he can get on Tommy John.
Probably easier to solve than gun violence, to be perfectly honest. We're referring to a question that was asked of Tank Dell, which is just insane. We might have to play this before the end of the show. But I do think if you're looking for someone to blame right now and get mad at, like, this is the most convenient one. Astros fans, because for the most part, the other problems are all just you when you look in the mirror.